called to love each other in that same way, to love each other for those flaws. Sorry, got a little passionate there. Do you want to talk a little bit about emotional bank account? We kind of alluded to that earlier. But
So we talked earlier about emotional bank account. So a metaphor Troy has is that if you're in a small room with really loud music, it can feel really suffocating because there's no space. But if you have a really large room and the same sound level of sound, it can be quite bearable or even enjoyable. And so sort of building up that emotional bank account sort of gives you more space to operate in your relationship so that you don't feel uncomfortable or suffocated or annoyed or whatever. When you're in a good space, it's easier to have things just roll off your back, like, it's all right. But when you're stressed or whatever, it's easy to snap out and react. And so between people, you can build up that emotional bank account by, one, responding to bids. And once you're aware of the whole bid things, you'll be amazed at how often, how many times people bid for your attention throughout the day. Like, I think it's really hard sometimes because, we're now in the cell phone age, right, where everybody's on, on the phone. So one person might say something, another person's like totally engrossed. So there's a lot of missed bids between friends, in relationships. I mean, with us and our kids, I notice that sometimes I'll just go check my email. We'll have to say something like 3 times before I can even understand that she's talking because I get so zoned in. And I've missed 3 bids there where she's like, Mom, Mom, Mom. Sometimes they just like to say Mom repeatedly before they even have anything to say. So it's kind of hard to know whether it's a true bid or if they're just repeating your name for some reason. But that's with with your spouse, and just being attuned to when a bid happens and having the presence to try to respond in a positive way, because that's going to make that space bigger, as opposed to being either neutral, sort of not responding at all, or especially negative. Sometimes there's people who are negative Nancy's, or that if you say something, their first reaction is going to be like, oh, well, that's not a good idea. Or
sunset suck.
Right. And, so it's hard to build, an emotional bank account because your first bid, you're kind of shot down, then you're less likely to say, well, what about this? Because you've already kind of been shot down. So I guess the more positive you are, the more positive bids, it's just going to keep going. It sort of it kind of balloons on itself, the more positivity there is. And so
it's really just this idea of, like we said before, connection. I mean, it's so, we laughed at this because, first of all, it makes me look dorky, but bids can be so simple. Like, I have a tendency, this is something that somehow is in, the males in my family. Like, I just will, make random noises. Like, Molly's shaking her head. Apparently people who work with me have noticed this too. And not like bodily function noises, out of, although, yeah, anyways. So anyways, until we learned about this Gottman stuff, on marriage theory or whatever, I never even really had a realization about what that was about. I thought it was just I just needed, as an extrovert, I just needed to make noise, incoherent noise, blah blah, whatever. And what we realized was that those were actually bids that I was making, and so somewhat in a silly way, Emma would sometimes respond by making a silly noise back to me, and that was a positive reaction to a bid. It's super silly, but it just said hey, yeah, I know you're there and I care about you. Even though this is dumb, that's kind of what it's about. And it's silly, but that builds up that emotional bank account. And I think it's so important. People are really annoying. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but people can be really annoying, right? It's just, seriously, I mean, think about all the potential for annoyances in every single person. They are different than you, and that's why they're annoying, right? Think about it. Noises that people make, smells, habits, the way people dress, the way people eat, when they go to bed, when they get up, how they chew, how they blow their nose loudly, You know, farting, burping, dishes, loud, quiet music, you know, the way people drive, all those things can be annoying to you, right? I had this roommate in college who would slurp his milk when he got done with his cereal. And actually, my brother did this when I was growing up too. And that it could just annoy the heck out of me. Like, I could be sitting there at the table and it's just like, and it could just get under my skin. But what I noticed was that there were some days where I didn't even notice it. And it's like, what the heck was the difference between the days where I did notice it and it, like, I was like, wanted to like jump up and like, you know, pour the milk over his head or something, versus like the days where I like didn't even notice it. Why did it annoy me one day and it didn't another day? And the difference was that I had more of an emotional bank account built up on those other days, and so it didn't bother me because there was a positivity in the relationship. But when I had grievances built up towards this person, towards my brother, which could be every day, right, or towards my roommate, that slurping was the most annoying thing ever. Just notice it in your day. How many things could potentially annoy you and don't, and why? And think about the times when they do annoy you. Well, what's different, especially in your relationships? Especially like those of you who have roommates, whether you're close to them or not, why is it that this one thing always annoys you? And have you ever noticed that maybe on a particular time it didn't annoy you? What was the difference? Or maybe you could laugh about it a little bit more, right? That's mercy, right? That's compassion. Could you read that passage?
Matthew chapter 18, verse 21 to 22. Then Peter, approaching, asked him, Lord, if my brother sins against me, how often must I forgive him? As many as 7 times? Jesus answered, I say to you, not 7 times, but 77 times.
I mean, what the heck? That's ridiculous. How can you forgive somebody 70 times 7 for the same damn thing? And yet, that's exactly what Jesus was saying to me when I sat across from my roommate or my brother slurping the milk. And the formula for how you do that is you gotta be in a space of gratitude. Because it really, I mean, you know, who knows why that bothers me? Some people it doesn't bother them at all. But for whatever reason, that's my little quirk that bothers me. But if I'm in a space of generosity, it's not gonna bother me. If I can acknowledge my brother, why I'm grateful for him in that moment, then I can just laugh it off and be like, yeah, that's my brother. He slurps my milk, or he slurps his milk. He words it, he slurps my milk.
Hey, you know that?
Yeah. But that's how 70 times 7 is possible, because you've built up your emotional bank account. Not only have they helped build up the emotional bank account, but you've put yourself in a space where you have the emotional bank account to be generous. Okay. So, on that, we're going to turn back to you guys. What annoys you about your friend that you thought of before? Or whoever that person was that you thought of, friend, romantic partner, etc. What annoys you about them? And can you think of times when that trait or whatever annoyed the heck out of you? And can you think of a time where you overlooked that trait? What was the difference in those times? Helicopter flight, pilots. So what's the difference? Think about that for a moment. I mean, actually think of scenarios, like whatever it is that this person does to annoy you. Think of the last time they annoyed you, and think about a time, if you can, when maybe that thing didn't annoy you. Like, actually remember those scenarios, and try to think about what was the difference. Okay. Yeah.
You guys, this would be a good time to write down any questions you might have. Give yourself a second extra to write down your questions to bring up to Troy, or put them on this table by the camera here. If you can weasel up there.
Can we just ask them? Are they
Sorry, we haven't answered it. Well, we only have one section left. Say those So turn to your neighbors and talk a little bit about how can you build emotional income in your relationship with that person.
Give your questions to Austin here if you guys would.
How can you build an emotional income in your relationship with that person?
What I did, I just laid on the horn, was like, and it's because I was a little bit late on the way here.
Here, Austin, can I see the questions?
Yeah, just like heading off for a run, and it's still very hot. You know, you go for a run, you shower. Right. I was like in that stage, especially if you're in a hurry, it's like really quick. Yeah, so really just like the whole like array of bad reasons to have one.
No, you can ask it out.
But I still just better
I'm okay with that. It's like,
so yeah, like basically it's like when I'm in a good mood with driving the vibration large, but then really
yeah, it's like, what if it bothers you?
then like
It's like bothers you. I have like, when I'm watching.
When do you annoy me?
I share my own. So it gets to the bottom. So I guess feels like
When you go to a frenzy around the apartment before getting going to work, just like raise my stress level.
raises yours.
Yes, it's like frantically opening up. It's just like, why don't you just set aside like 2 minutes and stop sitting in front of your cinnamon and honey? Like, and just get ready a little earlier.
It's definitely something that I like to go over. So I would say like along those lines, like
Oh yeah. One of the things that like I was thinking of for you.
I was way laughing at
Frantically get ready for
You don't have to answer the question. No, that's here's the answer. No, that's a good one. Yep.
yeah, it bothers me.
But give Emma a heads up with her.
I guess like sometimes I don't need going around the cupboard because like opening things when I like don't care
Like, why don't you just start that process 5 minutes
he's
earlier?
really good at like listening to me and like anticipate it when I need her. So I think she's
Everything quick. She's like at like 1.5. I think, yeah, I mean, I would say probably the best
when you
way.
really need her, so like you're there, so it's kind of like respond to her text, sometimes like fine. Yeah, it annoys you shit outside of you.
Like, just showing that person. Some of us start a lot earlier than 8 a.m.
You always have to be like something.
Maybe for me, like to actually make it happen.
Okay, we're gonna call you guys back because we got some questions here and we want to give time to those too. So we're gonna answer a few questions right now. Then we've got just one little small section left. We'll finish up with that, and then we can try to get to the rest of the questions. So. Do you want to pick one?
Yeah, I can.
This one's, how do you handle waking up feeling crabby? When you wake up feeling crabby?
We can talk about that.
Well, I think the question is like, how do you handle waking up feeling crabby? And to me, it's less about how to, like the person who feels crabby, it's less about how do they handle it, it's more about who are the people that are being crabby to handle it, right? That's where the mercy comes in. So, well, I mean, let's just go back to what we've been talking about. Let's just say the night before, we'll just, if it's Emma and I. Let's say the night before we had a great night. We had a great date, we did something really fun, we went to Coldplay with our friends, which we did, and it was just a great night, and let's say that as part of that night, Emma, was just, super, whatever, she was affirming and affectionate, and, there's a great connection. The next morning, I wake up crabby for some reason. Emma, likely that space, that emotional bank account has been built up the night before. And so there's a more likelihood she will greet my crabbiness with a sense of mercy and forgiveness because proximity-wise, she's in this space of gratitude. She's in this space of, oh my gosh, feel connected to Troy. Versus, we've been fighting for a week. I wake up crabby, and it's just kind of like, there's another grievance. Troy's being, a jerk today. It just adds to the grievances, right? The emotional bank account's low. I haven't done anything really generous for her. I haven't been merciful. I haven't been active in my mercy. And so there's not a lot to draw from to kind of meet that crabbiness, right? And that's just the human condition, right? You are not going to be in a relationship where you aren't crabby or they aren't crabby. So you can't control that. But you can work on the emotional bank account. You can work on, well, how do I make a choice to be proactive then, so that when we meet those times, the times of suffering or grievances, we can meet them with a space of generosity rather than a space of grievance.
So, and that kind of leads to the next three questions that are sort of related, which are, how do we forgive someone when we have not yet built an emotional bank account with them? What was one of the most difficult times for you to find mercy? And how can you practice mercy in a relationship where it's not mutual? So all those kind of talk about where there isn't a bank account already, right? And so we're coming at it from marriage and what that's like, but
or even friendship can have that, yeah.
But the key to being merciful in general, I think, again, comes down to gratitude. And so, building up an emotional bank account in life, right? So to be thankful for the things that you have, to find good and reasons to be thankful for just different things here and there, so that when you approach life, you're coming from a space of gratitude, and it's just a much more positive place. So that if you have to show somebody mercy, it might be easier to tap your own well of emotions because you put yourself in a more positive space, a place of gratitude. It's easier to be more forgiving to somebody who cuts you off at the Target parking lot if you're kind of, in a good, like you said, if you're in a good space. Whereas if you're kind of frantic and hectic and just generally in a bad mood and somebody cuts you off, you're going to react more poorly. So, while we talk about it in a relationship, in general, having an attitude of gratitude is going to help you to be more merciful towards everybody.
Yeah, and I think, another example, I'm sure all of us have encountered somebody in need, whether it's on the street, whether it's even in the dorms, whether it's on campus, whether it's somewhere. And, who knows what that person is. The needs could be different. It could be someone who's looking for a handout, like they just need something, food, drink, shelter. It could be somebody who, is having a hard time with the printer in the library and their paper was due 5 minutes ago and they're just frantic and they just need somebody to help them, We are faced with scenarios like that throughout our life. And that's a situation, it's an opportunity for mercy, right? We don't owe those people anything. If we live our life simply out of justice, we will never respond positively to those situations because we don't owe them. You don't owe that person to help them with the printer. You don't owe the person, I guess in some social justice kind of theory way, you could say you owe somebody who is not getting their basic needs met if you have yours met. But at a very, right there in the moment, you don't owe them, right? But mercy demands we respond. It demands that we do something loving, and yet, oftentimes, we don't. And so the question is why? Why don't we? Why is it that the story of the Good Samaritan, why is it that the priest and the Levite passed him by, but the Samaritan didn't? Was it that the Samaritan saw the humanity in this other person and could be grateful for that humanity? What was it about that helped him respond? So I think that there's got to be, it's not just in a particular relationship that helps, but even if you don't know this person, having a sense of gratitude in your life will make you more generous, therefore more merciful.
There's a second part of one of these questions about how to keep from being taken advantage of or abused. And so this whole sort of context of mercy and intimacy is talking about relationships that are in general healthy. Abusive relationships, I don't know necessarily if all these takeaways might necessarily apply to those types of relationships. Because at some point you can be very merciful, but if somebody's abusing you, there's a point where that relationship is simply not healthy, and you need to separate from it. You know.
Yeah, that's where the virtue of justice comes in. That's, yeah. These, I mean, mercy is a virtue. It's something that we strive towards, but it's